Hello, everybody. Great job in week one. We seem to have had a very successful review of some basic concepts related to data analytics, as well as a good introduction to Gretel. I hope you've been finding the course site on Blackboard easy to navigate. Please always reach out if you have any technical issues related to the course site. I likely can't solve them, but I likely can find someone who can solve them for us. Thank you for the introductions that I asked for. It was a pleasure getting to read about all of you and get to know you better. I'm happy to hear, based on the learning journals, that most of you seem to be enjoying getting to use Gretel, which is very user-friendly software and a lot of times a lot of fun to use as well. Um, Great job with the paper and pencil assignment as well as the Gretel assignment for the first week. Really strong performances there. I wanted to mention that I won't be uploading solutions to the homeworks. The reason being the exams will be open book and open note. And if you had the solutions there too for all the homeworks, it would just be perhaps far too easy. So I just want to mention that, as well as I will always be commenting on your homeworks, and please feel encouraged to reach out if you have any specific questions about why you may have lost points or what a particular solution may be if you're still unsure after my comments. What else? If you could, and most of you did, if you could upload your Gretel homework as a Word document or PDF, as well as a separate script file, that would be much appreciated. And I honestly find it easiest to just copy and paste output tables and graphs directly from Gretel into your Word document when doing the Gretel homeworks. Very nice work with the learning journals. Don't forget about them each week. And an excellent job with the discussion forum. I just want to mention that the discussion forum and the learning journals will be graded on a per module basis. And I was lenient on maybe being a little bit late on some of the posts on this week's discussion forum. Just always please remember to get your initial posts up by Tuesday at midnight and your follow-up posts by Friday at midnight. But I can't say enough as to how pleased I was with week one's discussion forum. This is usually the point where I need to tell students that their comments or their response posts should not just be a quick praise for the person who wrote the nice comment. They should attempt to move the conversation along, and almost all of you did a great job with that. I was really pleased there. There seemed to be three main themes that came up in the discussion, and all of you gave great examples of what we referred to as bad data analysis. One major theme was, as we all know, correlation does not imply causation. There was a few examples of this and comments in reference to this as well. Natalie made some nice comments about this in discussing the gender wage gap and emphasizing how the type of profession, the location, years of experience are all important factors that need to be controlled for before any type of causal relationship can potentially be inferred. Nico, in his example on prevalence of suicide and U.S. government spending on science and technology, I think this fell in well with the point that correlation is not causation. A couple of other issues that came up here was there was a clear positive relationship between suicide prevalence and U.S. spending on science and technology, but population size wasn't controlled for, the rate of inflation wasn't controlled for. It just was basically showing two variables that have gone up over time, which is the case for many variables, especially when being analyzed across time. Tech gave a nice example about a strong relationship between abortions and cancer screening, but there was unit of measurement issues here as well. Again, good work. Excuse me. There was a number of examples about misleading or strange presentation of data. Jackie gave an example of a graphical presentation of COVID cases in Georgia, where the x-axis was measuring time. However, the axis was not in chronological order. The times did not all appear in a chronological sequence, which just made the information, while perhaps accurate, very difficult to appropriately interpret. Arun made a good point about needing to know what's the best variable to choose, and this was in reference to climate change. The layperson, for very good reason, may not know if ocean temperature or air temperature or land temperature is the appropriate variable to analyze when trying to get a sense of climate change over time. And even aside from choosing the correct variable, knowing using the correct units of measurement is important as well, and the correct scale, where if you use too broad of a scale in terms of the temperature, it's very hard to see the increase over time in global temperatures. Suraj gave a nice example of a pie chart where the percentages of each slice did not add up to 100, as well as a nice example about gun deaths in Florida, where the vertical axis was essentially inverted in that the variable's values were getting smaller as you increased or went up the vertical axis, which just made the interpretation quite difficult and also a bit misleading at first glance. So that was another big theme, misleading or strange presentation of data. The other big theme being correlation is not causation. I think another important general theme that came up is that in so many cases we need to know so much more of the context when analyzing any particular phenomenon. No single variable or statistic is ever going to shed light on situations like a global recession or the gender wage gap, for example. There's just so much that needs to be considered, so many other variables that need to be controlled for. No single statistic, no single variable will ever capture the full reality of what it is we're trying to understand. This is important to keep in mind even when we have reliable data and we're using reliable techniques. Many of the questions we're interested in just require an analysis from many different vantage points, and that is something that should always be kept in mind. There's many different factors that often will need to be controlled for. Just a couple of statements that really stood out to me. One from Arun, who said, "Too much going on in a graph makes my head hurt." Exactly, right? That's kind of the point of a graph, is to simplify. If you're ever having a difficult time understanding what's going on in a graph is probably not the best device in order to present the main points of whatever analysis was taking place. Sometimes, for better or worse, a table full of numbers is just going to be necessary, and a graph often will not be sufficient for painting a complete picture. And from Ashley, I liked how she said, "The way in which information is presented can often be just as powerful as the information itself." This was touched on in many of the posts and many of the comments, but I just think that statement kind of summed up quite nicely one of the major themes that came up in our discussion about bad data analysis. Great job there. Once again, keep it up with the discussion forum. This week, for the course, we are moving on to a review of probability theory and random variables. There's a lot here. We're really just providing a very basic overview of the underlying theoretical framework that is used in inferential statistics, which is where we will be moving in Module 2. So keep up the great work. Always feel encouraged to reach out with any questions you may have, and take care.